19th of September 2021. We are reading the material called Contribution Regarding Attention. It's a transcription of a cassette of a talk by Silo in September 1980.
Please request everybody to turn their microphones off.
In an era of strong hypnosis like this one, attention is a powerful tool with which to counter the influence of the system, discover one's weak points, and develop points of view and proposals that can serve to clarify people and help them in their opposition to the system. Our people have to make a little effort in this direction. Knowledge of oneself is very powerful. It increases reversibility, diminishes hypnosis, and allows one to make decisions. I hear the liberal good for nothings. I see their televised proclamations covered in ideology, and I am attentive. I know that I am paying attention, and the problem with directed attention, the problem for them, is that I don't lose my reference. I am not taken by the sensory promises that I am presented with. You're on mute, Ajit. Ajit, please unmute and speak.
I said that's good up till here.
Yeah.
Quite deep, quite deep.
We know.
So,
yeah.
No, we go back. No, we go back and we start with it. So, Antonio would like to take it up.
You're on mute, Antonio. You're on mute, Antonio.
No, I said you please go ahead, Ajit, because you had the chance to read this and observe some of the main points.
Okay, this was written maybe 30 years ago, but it was a talk maybe 30 years ago. But he says in an era of strong hypnosis like this one, and that era still continues, the era of hypnosis. It's very important to understand the word hypnosis here. That is, that we are directed to do things that maybe we do not want to do. We are taken on by a system which influences us and directs us to do things that probably we do not have free choices in, many of them. He says that in a system of this kind of strong hypnosis, attention is a powerful tool with which to counter the influence of the system. So whatever the values of the system are, to counter them, that influence, attention is the proper tool, is a very powerful tool. It also helps to discover one's weak points. That is, when you're doing a study on yourself, then you'd be able to arrive or discover at one's weak points and develop points of view and proposals that can serve to clarify people and help them in their opposition to the system. So also, you'd be able to make presentations, make proposals that help to clarify people who are also similarly opposed to you, opposed with you to the system. Our people have to make a little effort in this direction because knowledge of oneself is very powerful. It increases reversibility. Reversibility is the position that you can adopt where you instead of being passive, you go actively towards something. Like for instance, if you're using the mechanisms of reversibility of your memory, then instead of passively getting information from your memory, you go back into your memory and search for something. That is when you're using reversibility, you're reversing what would be the ordinary process of the memory. Same thing with our senses. Our senses passively receive information from the outside world, which we perceive. And as we learned, we also modulate this with our internal senses, our internal world, our internal landscape, and that becomes our reality. But when we go out towards perception, towards perceiving the objects that we want to see or hear or similar, then what happens when we look rather than just see, or when we listen for rather than just hear, you may be able to perceive sights and sounds or dimensions which are little above the ordinary. So what happens is that it changes your perception of reality, because the perception itself is less colored. That is, your attentive state is higher when your attention is when you're placing attention. You're breaking through your reveries. So actually, reversibility only can occur when you're placing attention. So doing so diminishes the hypnosis. As he says, it comes later about the TV. It diminishes the hypnosis and it allows one to make decisions based on better data. You're not just hypnotized, taken in by the system. You're not in semi-sleep. Your decisions aren't emanating from that, but rather you're attentive and you're able to make good decisions that you are making on your, you're not reacting. So he says, I hear the liberal good for nothings, and I see the televised proclamations covered in the ideology. That is, when there is, for instance, televised TV, where they are biased and they are promoting values, a certain type of values. Like if you're in a certain political regime, you have one type of value. If you're in another one, you have other type of values. So they're promoting the values of the system, of their system. And you're hearing this and you are attentive. When you are attentive, he says, I know that I'm paying attention, and the problem with me paying attention, the problem for them, that is the people who are purveyors of the values of the system, the problem for them is that I don't lose my reference. I am not taken in. I'm not taken by the sensory promises that I'm presented with. We understand that what we're hearing or listening all comes through our senses and their promises that they're giving us, and which I normally get influenced with. When I'm paying attention, I'm able to take better decisions. That's about what I can say, Antonio, please.
Yeah, I think it's very complete because you have explained reversibility very clearly. And obviously, if you have reversibility, you are not identified with your perception, and then you are one step behind, and therefore you can be critical about what is happening, because you can have a notion of yourself and at the same time the stimuli. So it's very clear.
Anybody wants to raise questions?
I think realizing that these things need to be done, that to have this ability, as he says, I hear the liberal good for nothings. I see their televised proclamation, blah, blah, blah. I am attentive. I know that I am paying attention, and the problem with directed attention, the problem for them is that I don't lose my reference. I'm not taken by the sensory promises that I am presented with. To be able to do this is an achievement, and here is a tool that can help us achieve it. The tool is attention. This is a very, very important thing to achieve.
Antonio,
Yeah.
can you explain some more about this sensory? What he had told?
Well,
The sensory promise.
we
Sensory
are
promise
normally
and sensory.
hypnotized. Hypnotized means that we a person under hypnosis, they will follow an instruction that comes visually or that comes through another senses without any criticism, without having any notion of themselves at the same time. We are very hypnotized and on a day-to-day life by the things that come to our senses. We see people, we listen things, we are attracted by that. We walk and we see in a shop lots of things, and then we start imagining to buy, to purchase, and like that we get engaged in things very easily without keeping any register of ourselves at the same time. We disappear as individuals, absorbed by the senses, you see. That is the state under which we are in our day-to-day life. When the stimuli are not external, they can come from your memory, or they can come from your imagination. Is what is called the reveries. We are always identified with your reveries. We are fantasizing continuously, as if we had a film inside the head. And when one sequence of the film starts, the other one stops, and the other one starts, and like that, we go on continuously. So we do not exist very much psychologically, most of the time. So when we break this hypnosis, is that we realize, yes, here I am, and here are my reveries, but I want to stop my reveries now. And I will direct my attention in this direction or the other direction. I will imagine a transparent sphere that is coming towards me, and I will do something intentionally. And that state is very different from the one that is describing here. That is the state in which we spend most of our lives. Hypnotized.
Here this sensory the promise is same the mechanism of sensory search. Our perception and evocation, it is referring same now.
Yes, yeah, because when we evoke,
The
I mean,
same
you can
mechanism.
evoke also mechanically, because you said I have to talk to my mother, for example, and then because you remember, and the image of your mother came into your mind, and then you try to remember something that you have to say to her. But all that can be completely mechanical as well. So you are completely asleep as well. But the important thing in all this description is that there is another way to be in the world, to be in our day-to-day life, that is when you are attentive. That means that you are aware that you are aware. I am aware that I am thinking about this or that. I am aware that I am imagining this that is coming through my memory. But you are here, and the memory is giving you information here, and then you can decide whether to act upon that or not. But that awareness is the interesting thing. That means to be attentive. It's attentive of yourself, because if you are a child and you are going to school and you have to be attentive at what the teacher is saying, because you have to answer a question, it doesn't mean that at the same time you are aware that you are paying attention, you know? So again, there are lots of things that we can do with lots of attention. For example, when you are designing a computer program or when you are typing a letter, you have to be attentive, otherwise you make mistakes. But you can type the letter, avoid mistakes, but doesn't mean that at the same time you are aware of yourself. It's different. So there are different levels of awareness, of attention. The level of attention that we are talking here, that Silo is talking here, is when you can do all these activities attentively, but at the same time, you are aware of yourself. It's called self-awareness. That's why it's called the first step of attention, is called directed attention. Is when you put attention into something, but you are aware that you are putting your attention into that something. It's a different way of
Directed attention having two aspects. One is towards the object, and the other aspect is the awareness of self. Is it
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Because you cannot direct the attention as an intentional action without being aware of yourself, because you are giving the order of your attention to be attentive, you see? So it's not a completely neat and defined awareness, self-awareness, but it's a first level of self-awareness. Because when you are giving the instruction to your attention to attend or not to attend, you are the one giving the order, and you have that notion of the self. When you have divided your attention completely, you have that notion of yourself, but much deeper. And at the same time that you have that, you have the notion of many other things happening around. So it's a more profound state, but in the same direction. So here he explains different levels of managing the attention, and there are two important things to that. There are different levels of depth, and it's not possible to go to the next one if you have not mastered the previous one. Doesn't mean that you don't need to wait several months before saying, no, now I can master my directed attention. Because immediately after you feel comfortable with directed attention, you can try to divide the attention and go one step further in the same session of attentive work. And then you can go even further and try to keep simultaneously the sensation of your psychophysical structure at the same time that you are attending. So you can pursue in the same session of work different levels, but it's recommended that you don't move from one to the next one until you have more or less gained some control over the previous one, because otherwise you're nowhere.
Self-liberation contain some exercises related to this directed attention and divided attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell anything, some more practices done in the initial stage regarding this directed attention and divided attention? Any some more exercises?
Yeah,
Not
I think
mentioned
there
in
Ajit, who has
self-liberation.
reviewed this, probably he will have a couple of examples that he could
I
provide you.
would suggest that Baiju, I would suggest that we go further in this, because he comes across these. Come across that you're asking for.
पहले टाइम ले कागज लऽ कऽ तकर बाद लड़ाई शुरू करबै आ जब कागज अहाँके
Okay.
सबूत जे आबि जायत
Let us all go on mute.
मतलब
Sudhir, you'll read, no, Sudhir?
90 वर्ष से जुझि रहल छथिन, बिना कागज के थोड़िए जोतैत हेथिन। 80-90 वर्ष भऽ गेलै तऽ ओहि के
Sudhir, you're going to read?
Yes, I will read.
Before we start, Sudhir, you have the ability to put everybody on mute, no, as a host.
Yes.
You should do that. please, instead of requesting every time.
We know of one kind of attention, that is daily attention. The attention that goes in the direction of the stimuli. A stimulus is produced and I pay attention. I ring a bell and the dog goes to eat. I go toward things according to how my attention is called by a sensory stimulus. We know of another kind of attention. There are many stimuli, and out of all of them, I go towards those stimuli that coincide with my interests. In the first case, the attention is called simply by stimuli, and it is a mechanical response. I make a noise and away the people go. The second case, in which the subject has their interests and all that, appears to be an attention that is a little more conscious. But it is an attention that is equally mechanical. It doesn't come from the stimulus. It doesn't come from the stimulus, but instead goes from you to the stimulus. In any case, the attention is still taken by those aspirations, by those behaviors that have not even been reviewed. One doesn't even know why one has those interests. And so why do we go? Because that's how we are built. That's how we are conditioned to respond to the stimulus. Very interesting. I'm not sure if you see how the source is different regarding the orientation of the attention. The first is a kind of animal attention called by external stimuli. And the second is an attention that really is human, which is that thing of going to the other, interest. But observe that as much in one case as in the other, one is not moving with genuine control, moving and knowing what one is doing in neither of those cases. There is a difference between the two, but it is clear that one doesn't know what one is doing in either case. We know these forms of attention. We know what divided attention is, for example. We know what it is to be attending to two stimuli at the same time. That kind of attention in reality is not very frequent, except for in a few professionals, some occupations, or in exercises. There is a certain capacity to attend to two things at the same time. Sometime a profession will demand that. Someone might say, okay, then that thing becomes mechanical, and we see a guy driving the bus. He takes the fare, gives the ticket, makes change, yells at the people in the back. That becomes mechanical. But there are professions in which that attention is divided. Through experience, through practice, works, exercises, we know about that kind of attention. There is another kind of attention, which is directed attention. We can do many exercises or experiences, and the only thing that we are going to achieve with those exercises is to understand that attention is very elastic, that it allows for different forms, and we are going to be able to test our own attention. But we can't propose those practices beyond what they really are, a practice or a test. We can't do that to go beyond practice, because if we think there will be a transformation by exercising a form of attention through effort and sustained practice, in reality, what is going to be produced is fatigue. And we will work hard on day 1, day 2, day 3, a little less on day 4, less on day 5, and then nothing. It takes a lot of effort, and we can't put it aside to then pick it up again without much effort. It's such a short time, and consequently, we don't obtain benefits proportional to our efforts. So these are things that cannot be sustained. Those tests are of interest because they allow us to understand the secrets of attention. One of the things that directed attention can allow us to understand is that our reversibility works with greater fluidity. In the measure that we are conversing and we are aware of what we are saying, we don't lose our center of gravity. We realize that it is pretty difficult for us to be taken because we could be told one thing or another, but our look is clear. We are neither as susceptible nor as vulnerable to the pressure of the group or of situations, nor to the presentation of cheap images, because we have our center within ourselves. At one point, it was said that one of the characteristics of hypnosis was the loss of reference within the subject and the capacity to make comparisons. That loss of the ability to make comparisons to the point where the object became the central thing. At that point, it wasn't possible to compare it to anything. And without those comparisons, one would fall into that whole field of influences.
So
That happens.
they will stop here because this is another totally different strain of thought.
Okay.
We'll go back to that, the previous paragraph, just a little bit I had. Yeah, we stop at that ourselves because we have our center within ourselves.
Yeah.
So we'll go up. Go back.
Yeah, three different
So
kinds
yeah,
of attentions are explained.
Yes, little, yeah. We know before this also. So here, Baiju is describing these different forms of attention. And as you're asking for the exercises, he says we can do exercises, but those exercises can just be that, exercises. We can increase our attention by becoming aware of ourselves, by being more aware of ourselves. It is not to be taken in the form of to be interiorized, not that way, to be like what is the word, to get too much interior on Antonio is slipping my mind.
Inspection. Introspection.
Yeah, introspective. Not you become introspective, but you don't become to be a person who is not social. He becomes very
Introvert.
What is that? Introvert. Yeah, it should not make one an introvert. Attention should not make one an introvert. Attention is a tool where you become introspective. That is, you examine things. This is very important to know, right? It's not that you seclude yourself or you remove yourself from surroundings or circumstances. No. By having attention, you may value some things more than others. You may drop several of the activities that you're doing. You may center yourself. That is a different thing. That is, you'll prioritize your life as such. But you should not become an introvert. This is a very important part. Okay. So when we go to this, we go back to this little before this, Sudhir, please. Little before this. So that, no, too far. So he says, I'm not taken by the sensory promises that I'm presented with. So the external world, they are trying to influence me with their own values, system, whatever it is, you know. So advertising, for instance, they know what makes people tick. They understand, they study it, they analyze it. They say that, you know, a person will go for this color, for this shape, for this form, for this presentation, whatever. So they're trying to trap you. They're trying to hypnotize you. They're trying to involve you. And it becomes a problem for them if you don't get involved. That you watch it, you see it, you may appreciate it, but you're not taken in by the values. The girl standing next to the car, and you're influenced because of the girl, not because of the car. Okay, that's why they use so many females in car advertisements and motorbike advertisements. Yeah. So this is the way they hypnotize you. They influence you. Now, see, when he talks about attention, he says, we know one kind of attention, that is daily attention. The attention that goes in the direction of the stimuli. A stimuli is produced and I pay attention. The telephone rings. So I go there. Yeah, I was doing something else. I was involved with something else. But then that becomes urgent for me to pick up. Okay. Then I ring a bell and the dog goes to eat. That is, I've trained the dog that when I ring this bell, your food is ready. You know? I go towards things. Actually, there was a great experiment on this by Pavlov, a Russian scientist, who did this Pavlov experiments about the dog and ringing the bells. And he found out that, you know, you could train these animals to respond to a certain stimuli, to different stimuli. So this is daily attention. I ring a bell and dog goes to eat. I go towards things according to how my attention is called by sensory stimulus. Yeah, so thirst makes me go to the fridge and or maybe drink a glass of water or whatever. We know of another kind of attention. There are many stimuli, and out of all of them, I go towards those that coincide with my interests. So there are many stimuli, but I go to that one. There's in the background, there's a song playing. It's a song that I like. It brings back nostalgia. So I go and I make it a little louder. Okay. So he says, in the first case, the attention is simply by the stimuli, the bell, the doorbell. And it's a mechanical response. I go towards it. I make noise and away people go. I know what noise. Maybe I shout at people and say, okay, come and stop it, you know, whatever it is, and people go, whatever it is. The second case, in which the subject has their interests and all that, appear to be an attention that is a little more conscious. Here the subject is where he says, I go and pick out that particular thing that interests me. So appears to be an attention that is a little more conscious. But it's an attention that is equally mechanical. In both the cases, he says, they're mechanical. There's a stimulus and I go towards the stimulus. One driven by just a routine and one driven by a choice, but still mechanical. It doesn't come from the stimulus, but now he's still talking about the second one. It doesn't come from the stimulus, but instead goes from you towards the stimulus. That is, you went to increase the volume because you like that song. In any case, the attention is still taken by those aspirations, by those behaviors that have not even been reviewed. Okay, so I'm taken, I'm going towards that, but I am not aware of myself doing so when I'm doing that. You know, one doesn't even know why one has those interests. Why particularly I like that song. And so why do we go? And therefore, why am I pulled? Because that's how we are built. That's how we are conditioned to respond to the stimulus. Very interesting. Okay, we find ourselves taken. I'm not sure even this very act of listening to this, reading to this, and going into the subject is very interesting, because now we're trying to pay attention to what attention means. I'm not sure if you see how the source is different regarding the orientation of the attention. That is, in one, it was a stimulus, in one, it was a choice. The first is a kind of animal attention called by external stimuli, and the second is an attention that is really human, which is the thing of going to the other. Interests. Maybe interesting, huh? or towards that other interest. But observe that as much in one case as in the other, one isn't moving with genuine control. Moving and knowing what one is doing, that is being aware, in neither of those cases. See, this is the most important thing. That the difference between just going to them, going to those things and being aware. The doorbell rings, I go towards the doorbell mechanically. The doorbell rings, I become aware of myself. I say, am I dressed? Am I okay? Yeah. I put on something, a shawl or a shirt or something, and I go. So I paid attention for a little while to myself and I went. But I still went mechanically, but I was aware. There was a little difference between my just going towards the doorbell and becoming aware of myself for a momentary awareness. So one, in the one case, one didn't move with genuine control and knowing what one is doing. In the second one, you did it because you understood what you're doing. You're going somewhere, but are you ready to go there? Okay. So in the first case, neither of the cases, there is a difference between the two, but it's clear that one doesn't know what one is doing in either case. Not the case where you check yourself to see, that's when you start getting awareness. In one, you just went and did things without being aware of what you're doing. I mean, you're lost. You're lost in the things that you're doing. You're continuing to think of what you're thinking, maybe in your reverie, and you're mechanically doing something, paying attention. You're picking up that apple and you're going to the kitchen and getting a knife, and but you're thinking about that reverie that you're having or whatever it is. So you're really not, you're paying basically some attention, but you're not really aware of what you're doing. You're not really aware. Can we go down? When you go too high, Sudhir, I have a difficulty because your image is in between, in the right-hand corner of my thing. So, yeah. We know these forms of attention. We know what divided attention is, for example. Antonio, I need a clarification here, please. Because in the hierarchy of attentions, I always thought, and you can correct me, please. I always thought that we have simple attention, and then the next level is divided attention. And the level attention beyond that is directed attention when you go outside of yourself to do something as a hierarchy of attentions. Am I right or wrong?
I think it's more or less the same, but with a different sort of denomination, because we had a system that was called ADMI, that meant A for I attend, D, I divide, en lo divido, M, that means I manage it, I can operate with the system, and the I, the last one in ADMI, is I incorporate the system now is in all its different stages for your use. You have control over it. So in that traditional state, you have 4 different stages. In this comparison that you are presenting, there is a directed attention doesn't seem to be the first one of the different stages of control of the attention, does it? Which is the simplest of all of them?
The simplest is just simple attention.
Yes.
That as I get, as you said, at me, A was stood for
Mm?
I attend.
Atiendo, yes, I attend.
I attend. So that is a
But
simple
I
attention.
attend in the system of ADME means that you are directing your attention.
Oh, no. Then these are 4 stages. You're talking about 4 stages in directed attention.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the
We'll
rest
come to
is
that later.
that naive attention, that attention of it's not part of the game because you are not going anywhere with that distinctions of the very preliminary one. It's more to introduce a topic of attention and to use day-to-day experience, life experience, models and examples for people to realize what we are talking about. But in the process of managing the mechanism, the first step is atiendo. And atiendo in Spanish means I direct my attention. Because how can you know that you are attending if you are not directing your attention? Would be a sort of passive, sort of directed attention, where you are keeping your attention into something that perhaps initially has been attracted by an external stimuli, but you are keeping your attention and you start to be aware that you are keeping your attention. But at that point, when you start to be aware that you are keeping your attention, you are directed your attention or not.
Yes.
So it's a bit, it's semantic more or less. I think you are in very good track with the levels that you have distinguished because it's exactly like that.
I'm having a little problem with Zoom. I'm out.
No, you are there.
Yeah, we can hear your voice, but we don't have your image.
I don't know what's happening. Oh God. But you have really shared with us a gem, Antonio. We'll go into this ADME a little later as we get through, because it does come up, a little bit of it does come up in this particular.
In that explanation. But the fallback in all this is that we are the masters. Yes, you see, the instructor, Silo the master, proposes systems of attention, but the more that you work with it, there is one of these combinations that will work better for you. And then you take control over your system of practices. Is your thing, is your system now. And you can choose if you are going to have as a point of support your left fist, or that you are going to have a foot, or if you are going to do both hands at the same time, or whatever you want to do. Because you are the master, because you understand in which direction you want to go, and you are at the same time measuring the quality of attention that you are obtaining as a result. And that is beautiful, because it's not something fixed coming from outside, but really is something that you have to adapt, and your registers will give you the answer of your questions.
Yes. It is important to understand what Antonio is saying about the fist. You attend to the sensation of one of your hands. Yeah, that we come to here. Now, we know these forms of attention. We know what divided attention is, for example. We know what it is to be attending to 2 stimuli at the same time. So I am listening to you, somebody in front of me, I'm listening to him, but at the same time, as Antonio is saying, is that when I pay attention to the sensation of my fist, of my hand, I don't ball it up into a fist. That is in the relaxation exercise, but because sitting with my fist in front of somebody else would mean something else. So in my hand, I pay attention to my right hand, and at the same time, I'm listening to this person who's probably shouting at me for something because he was angry with me and all, and I don't just want to get hooked into that. So I'm listening to him, I'm paying attention to what he's saying, but at the same time, I'm not being drawn in because I'm paying attention to the sensation of my hand. I'm becoming aware. Is that okay, Antonio?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
When
That
I
kind
just
of
met
attention-
Silo, he was, for example, doing informal chats. We were all sitting on the floor because we didn't have special meeting places or anything like that. And then, and he was walking. We are all sitting on the floor. Let's imagine 40 people in a room or in 2 rooms connected, a living room that normally is dining room. And then he was walking up and down and giving an explanation about attention. And I always observed that he was always doing something with one of the hands. The left hand was sort of pressuring the thumb. He had a thumb that was sort of, he did lots of things with the hand. So he were like instruments, the hands, very sort of
He was like a
vital.
conductor.
Exactly.
Music.
Exactly. And with the left one, he was keeping pressure between these 2 fingers. No? But not a pressure like that, very soft. No, no, he was stimulating the thumb because he wanted to have that stimuli. And in the meantime, he was developing an explanation, very systematic about, for example, the method, the different ways of working, the method and the laws, the universal laws and all that, and then walking up and down with the thing. So clearly, he was doing his internal work. I don't know what he was associating to that mudra, because those gestures or superior gestures are called mudras, at least in the language of Buddhism. And obviously he was associating to that particular movement or that sensation some mental operation that he was working with at the time in his own personal training. So it's very interesting to see the way that he approached some of the things. I don't know the content, but I saw him using the mechanism, you see?
Mhm.
And was his own thing. So you can, using basic mechanisms, you can go recording later on, associating to it your own plan, your own intention for achieving different levels of depth within yourself or control about your internal state of consciousness of yourself,
Right.
where you need to have the co-presence of the body, but you are imprinting a different direction to the mental processes. Fascinating.
Another gem. Another gem you've got into.
memory gems. But so when we start to use these things, really, yeah, it brings us to another world of experience. And in that sense, I think you are the doorkeeper because it's your experience. And you know where you want to go in the end, towards a higher level of consciousness.
Right. So we continue. That kind of attention in reality is not very frequent, except for in a few professions. Now, the work of the profession demands this. The work of the occupation demands it. And so you train yourself to do this, but not with the idea of improving your attention or anything of that. That is a byproduct. It's not intentional in that sense. It's a byproduct. But he says that except for in a few professions, some occupations or in exercises where you're doing this and at the same time you're paying attention to what you're doing. Like for instance, if there's a foot pedal, you're in an operation, you're doing some operation and there's a foot pedal, and at a certain juncture you press the foot pedal because it's got to do something. So you have to be aware of both your foot and your hands and of course your mental capacities to conduct that particular operation. So you see, so that's why you're dividing your attention between many things and you're becoming aware of many things. There is a certain capacity to attend to 2 things at the same time. Sometimes a profession will demand that. Someone might say, okay, then that thing becomes mechanical and we see a guy driving the bus. He takes the fare, gives the ticket, makes change, yells at the people in the back. That becomes mechanical. But there are professions in which that practice, that attention is divided. Now, let us go to the bus driver. He's doing many he's multitasking, as we talk about nowadays. He's doing many things at the, not the same time, but in sequence, many things, but they're all different things. He's driving the bus, he's opening the door, he's taking the fare, he's checking the passengers, he's calling out the station, the bus station number, whatever. So he's doing many things, but that it becomes part of a routine. It becomes mechanical. He himself is not aware about what he's doing. He's just aware of the sequence of things that he's supposed to do. That's it. He's aware of it and he's doing it. Like we take up cycling, and after some time, we become just used to cycling, and we're cycling along and we're doing our thing. So it becomes mechanical. But there are professions in which that practice, that attention is divided. In the sense, you need to, whatever reason, you need to maintain that level of division. In the sense, like, you're paying attention to what you're doing. And your attention is divided between two things. Though through experience, through practice, works, exercises, we know about that kind of attention. Okay, so this is about divided attention. There is another kind of attention, which is directed attention. Let's go down. So there. We can do many exercises. Stop there, please. It goes too high, I can't see it then. Come down a bit. We can do many exercises or experiences, and the only thing that we are going to achieve with those exercises is to understand that attention is very elastic, that it allows for different forms, and we are going to be able to test our own attention. We are going to be able to test our own attention. But we can't propose these practices beyond what they really are, a practice or a test. We can't do that, go beyond the practice, because if we think there will be a transformation by exercising a form of attention through effort and sustained practice, in reality, what is going to be produced is fatigue. We will work hard on day 1, day 2, day 3, a little less on day 4, a little less on day 5, and then nothing. And then nothing. It takes a lot of effort, and we can't put it aside to then pick it up again without much effort. It's such a short time, and consequently, we don't obtain the benefits proportional to our efforts. So these things cannot be sustained. I was just thinking about Baiju. Baiju, this answers your question, actually, about the need for more exercises. And if you're looking for results in them. You're there, Baiju?
Yes, Baiju is there.
Baiju is there, but I think
We
some
can't
problem with his audio.
with his
Okay,
signal.
so long as he's listening, he can come in anytime he wants. But what he's saying is that you'll just begin fatigue. You have to learn the awareness part of it, becoming aware of yourself. That is the key. And as Antonio was saying, that Silo was using in relaxation, when we do relaxation, we have to go to, say, for the external relaxation, we have to do 3 passes, going from the sides of your body, front of your body. But before you start the relaxation exercise, just getting yourself into the right position, doing the little jiggle, moving yourself into the right position, getting yourself into the right posture, everything is half the relaxation game. You see, that itself is the is like the awareness we're talking about that is required. You need to get this awareness in. Then you're making that bedrock of being able to bring attention. You want to have attention when you want to have it. This is the important thing. Whenever you want to have attention, it should be at your command. You should be able to control your attention. It's okay to let your attention go, to be able to get into semi-sleep, to reverie, to think. But when you want to be awake, and without reveries, then attention plays a very important role. So Sudhir, we can go down further. Those tests are of interest because they allow us to understand the secret of attention. One of the things that's important, the tests are important for us to find out the secrets of attention. And I think one of the secrets of attention is awareness, or they're interchangeable. Intention gives you awareness, awareness gives you attention. One of the things that directed attention can allow us to understand is that our reversibility works with greater fluidity. That is, our ability to go into the memory and search, and our ability to use go out into our senses and get a greater awareness in our perception. This ability to do this, see, we want this ability at our hand. This ability is the ability to break the hypnosis. This ability is the ability to bring about attention. This ability of reversibility. It's a tongue twister. This ability of bringing in reversibility is the secret to attention. And this is the gauge. This ability to bring about this is the gauge. And the moment that works, fluidity comes in, then it's great. You find you're with better co-presence, you're with better awareness, and things have more dimension. It's good. In that measure, we are conversing and we are aware of what we are saying. We don't lose our center of gravity. When a person is angry, he has lost a center of gravity. He says, he reacts. He's not aware of what he says. He says things that if you tell him later that you said this and you said, he said, no, I didn't say all this. You know? He's not aware of himself, basically. So what happens is that when we have this attention, we are conversing, we are aware of what we are saying, and this helps us not to lose our center of gravity. And evolution would be to be able to bring about that equilibrium, that balance within ourselves. That's us evolving. That is, in everything that we do, we gain greater equilibrium and greater balance. That will be the test, the center of gravity. We realize that it's pretty difficult for us to be taken because we could be told one thing or another, but our look is clear. We're neither as susceptible nor as vulnerable to the pressure of the group or of situations, nor to the presentation of cheap images, because we have a center, we have our center within ourselves. That is, we are building our center. Can we locate the center with anything, Antonio, with that sphere, or like when we give gratitude, we associate it with the sphere? Would this center, or is just a general feeling?
It's a register. It's a register of the what does it mean? You are more awakened at that point. You are more in control. You take a distance from the hypnosis of your reveries and of your external senses. So all that gives a manner of feeling, a manner of being in the world. It gives you a stronger sense of identity, speaking in the more profound sense of identity. And what is the relationship with the sphere? I mean, if you are talking with the work with the force.
Yeah, generally, I mean, in the sense, the spheres are attached with the force, with, you know, we reinforce it with thankfulness and gratitude, and it's like that.
Yes, I mean, I think there are two different things. I think
Different things, but the registers, they're all registers.
yes, that register will be perhaps similar. Will be the register of your inner identity, of your inner self, of a different level of consciousness that is more awakened, if you want. And
Right.
you will need all these registers in several practices in order to master the practice. You need a
Yes.
starting level. I mean, that is precisely that. It's a point of connection with yourself and within yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go on a limb here, but now
One-
when a person,
One minute,
we talk
one
about
minute,
taking-
Ajit. 1 minute, Ajit.
yeah, sure.
Some lighter part. Actually, Antonio, did Silo tell any time? I mean, you remember that the age and the reversibility or whatever the attention, how it is connected? Because when we are getting old, our reversibility efficiency reduces, and also attention also reduces in
Yeah.
normal human being.
Yes.
So now, is there any connection with that?
Well, once I asked him, I asked him a few years before he died. I said, "What happens when you start to get old, and you start to see that your fundamental functions of alertness, etc., start to falter?" And he said, yes, some aspects may falter, but other aspects are still there and will be your references in that circumstances. So he didn't say, oh, well, look, all people have no hope. No, he didn't say that at all. So the thing is that you have to go adapting
Yeah.
your system of
maybe,
your registers
maybe
again.
we have to practice the attention regularly, and the reversibility. Sometimes that will improve everything and balance.
Yeah, you have to say, Dayanand, stop here. You say it to yourself. I am not saying it to you. And then you just stop for a minute what you are doing with
Yeah.
your habits. What happens is when we become older, our habits become more entrenched, and then we are less aware of them. And so that presents a certain resistance to reversibility, because reversibility essentially means to be able to become aware of what you are doing, to put another focal point of attention, but over yourself.
Yeah.
And of course, if you have to fight with more entrenched habits, then you have to stop, probably even stop physically, whatever you are doing. And so that will make you aware. So you need to modify a bit the technique, because you find that you are, for example, becoming more self-stubborn. That is a concept that has not been developed in the doctrine, but I mean, could be the result of us getting a bit older.
Because we all are getting old. That is the
Yes,
problem.
exactly.
One of the main faculty used in the mental discipline is the attention.
Yes.
Is it right now?
It's correct, because it's very abstractive, the mental discipline. You are not working with any sort of physical things. The material discipline works with analogies between the laboratory and the analogies that you establish with yourself. In order to establish those systems of analogies, you have to obviously compare your registers, and that requires to be very attentive. But in the mental discipline and in morphology, where you are working with forms, you will have to pay attention to abstractive works of your mind. And that requires lots of attention as we know it. But when you work with the energy as well, because you will have to follow the registers when you are moving energy within your psyche, you will have to follow it up. So it's difficult for me to say which discipline will require more attention or less attention. I think to start a discipline, you will require a really good control of your attention. That's why the disciplines work with procedures that tend to be fixed, your routines. Through your routine practice, you are building up also permanence in your attention capability. But certainly in the mental, because I did the mental, and I can assure you that if I was not attentive, I immediately lost the plot. I mean, I wouldn't be able to follow the problematic of that particular step.
Okay, thank you, Antonio.
Pleasure, Dayanan. We are here for a long course.
We're not leaving you alone so soon.
Yes.
Yes, Ajit.
Yeah, so when I said I was going out on a limb, it was very similar to what Dayanand said, because a thought struck me that really when we have suffering and pain and suffering, but more suffering, when we have suffering, then it brings about a lot of reveries. And those reveries are the reveries that color our world. So really, truly, if we are able to have attention, we may be able to perceive, get glimpses as to what is happening to us and what we are thinking and what is as a result and why our moods are this way and what are our conflicts and what are our contradictions. So it can help us, as he says, with the mechanisms of reversibility, which is very important in this case. That it's not just memory throws up something passive, but rather like the guided experience, I evoke, I go back into that and I search and I look for clues. And it's not I shouldn't do a random search, but I do it purposefully. I write down what I want to do and I go back and I look into that. So in the measure that we've done this, no? We go down.
Yeah.
Right? Up to here, right? No, now
This
you
was
start.
enjoyed, Dayanan.
Okay. We are 6 o'clock would be our 2 hours. We have to decide. At
Yeah.
6 o'clock we'll decide. Okay. Sudhir, at one point you read from there.
At one point, it was said that one of the characteristics of hypnosis was the loss of reference with the subject. This we have read.
Okay.
This we have read.
And I wasn't paying attention then.
Okay. At one point, it was said that one of the characteristics of hypnosis was the loss of reference within the subject and the capacity to make comparisons. That loss of the ability to make comparisons to the point where the object became the central thing. At that point, it wasn't possible to compare it to anything. And without those comparisons, one would fall into that whole field of influences. That happens in dreams as well. And it doesn't just happen in hypnosis, it happens in daily life. The suggestive power of the image is very strong. The suggestion of the moment in which one lives, the social environment, the suggestion of the press, the TV, these act very strongly. There is nothing to make comparisons with. Everything is the same everywhere. There are certain established values. All of that is accepted. All of that is not thought. That is what happens. That is what occurs. You are subjected to that great field of influences and your attention finally ends up going in that direction. And there we are trapped in that hypnosis of the system. We have spoken about these things at times.
Yeah.
The capacity.
Then comes another thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
This expands on that. We'll stop here for a little while.
Okay. Okay.
uh, at one point, you said that one of the characteristics of hypnosis was a loss of reference within the subject. So when a person is being hypnotized, he gives in to the hypnotist, the person who's hypnotizing him, his suggestions. And the hypnotist's suggestive ability makes the person who's undergoing the hypnosis lose himself. He loses his center, he loses his references. So, and the capacity to make comparisons. This is when you have lost your references. That loss of ability to make comparisons to the point where the object becomes the same central thing. At that point, it wasn't possible to compare it to anything. And without those comparisons, one would fall into that whole field of influences. That happens in dreams as well. And it doesn't just happen in hypnosis, it happens in daily life. Now, what happens is that when we lose our capacity to make comparisons, that is what is being told to us, we have no references with which to compare it, then we fall into that field of influence. So he says it happens in daily life. The suggestive power of the image is very strong, and the suggestion of the moment in which one lives. All this, the social environment, the suggestion of the press and the TV, these act very strongly. Now, what happens is that we have these influences from outside, the values of the system. And if I'm trying to live up to the values of the system, which is beauty and money and power, all these things, if I beg your pardon, there's one more, no?
No,
Beauty, right?
power,
Sex, money, and power, no? Prestige. So if I'm trying to live up to all these things, which the system is demanding or saying that these are the values, this is the scale, and I'm trying, and that is what is influencing me, and I don't have a center within me as to compare whether this is worth my time, what I want, really what I want, what I need to go after. Yeah. So this suggestive power of the image is very strong. The suggestion of the moment in which one lives, the social environment, the suggestion of the press, the TV, these act very strongly. There's nothing to make comparisons with, and everything is the same everywhere. There are certain, go ahead, Sudhir, there are certain established, down, certain established values. All of that is accepted. All of that is accepted. That is, we are accepting all of that when we are taken by the system. All of that is not thought. That is what happens. That is what occurs. You are subjected to the great field of influences, and your attention finally ends up going in that direction. And there we are trapped in that hypnosis of the system. We have spoken about these things at times. So he says, you don't want to be drawn into that, giving your attention to them. When you have control of your attention and you're not lost in the system, it is their loss. They are not able to control. So Antonio, want to expand on this, please?
You're on mute, Antonio.
I think Ajit is repeating what has been repeated from the beginning, no? And that the persuasive effect of the system and how we fall into the system, and yes, it's the same idea, repeated, and yes. Well, I would want, I don't know how you are planning the rest of the meeting, because here we have like 15 pages. We have done like a third of that. So I wondered if we are going to do a practice or you want to continue, but I will have to leave right now. So
No.
I don't want to interrupt. I mean,
So we're going to do this over 2-3 sessions.
yes. So we have perhaps
We end here. We end here.
we end here. So are we doing a practice?
If something that you can suggest.
Just an idea.
Meditation.
Sudhir may
Just,
have. Yeah.
yes, Antonio, just an idea.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. No,
ahead,
I
Sharvin.
don't know. Yeah, this is everything sort of for, I don't know how many of us remember or were in that time during the centers of work. Well, in the 80s, I don't know how many of us were involved there, because it was quite, they had the practices of attention and direct attention. And we did some exercises of stones, taking stones and going to various places. I don't know how many, worldwide we had those centers of work. So that was a very concrete illustration of attention on attention. For example, the theme of this whole today's talk. So I was wondering how many of us had that experience. I know, Antonio, you were there, we were conducting, but of the centers of work, Sudhir, I don't know, because that makes it very, very interesting, very, it makes it very easy to understand the whole today's thing. It's, it's like, for example, one example was illustration of a video. Imagine a video camera on yourself, like that was an idea that was given. Imagine a video camera on yourself, in terms of attention on attention or direct attention. So I just thought whether you can, that was a very, it was a great experience to really to get the main ideas of today's, at least today's theme. I wonder, Sudhir, were you also, did you also go through some of the centers of work at the time?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so we had that, so you'll know that it's not entirely, because entirely new in the sense, but it's very nice, technical and nice and soft, as they say. Yeah.
Yes, Sherwin, Ajit here. All
Yeah.
of us who are present here today have gone through the centers of work.
Fantastic. So I just recalled. Our work.
It's like,
good. Mhm.
it's like what you're saying about attention, directed attention, or attention, as you're saying, is that you have some object in front of you, and now you use a binocs to look at that object. Yeah, so you see that object clearly, is focused, and now you're paying attention to your looking through the binocs. You're paying attention that I'm looking through these binocs and I'm seeing this object. And now you're paying attention to how you're paying attention to yourself, paying attention to the binocs.
Yeah.
And you see, okay, let us not go to something like a video camera that's looking at us, paying attention. No, because that would be like theological, God is watching you. No, I'm watching myself. Okay. You get the distinction, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm watching myself and I'm getting registers that I'm able to be in touch with myself, watching myself. It's very deep, these things, huh? Very deep. Actually.
Yeah.
So what's practices Antonio suggesting?
Well, maybe Sudhir can do some of the deep breathing or something, because if we continue going with long practices, I mean, we'll be 3 hours and then we will lose our attention. but if we do this practice, that would be very good, and we regain our center and we can apply everything that we have been learning. Yes.
We can do this 2-minute exercise.
Yeah.
With a little more time. So we close our eyes, keep one hand on the heart. Let's breathe deeply and imagine that the air you carry goes to your heart. You can feel it with your hand, your deep breath taking the air to your heart. Breathe in and out deeply, feeling the air going to your heart. Then ask with strength for yourself and your dearest loved ones. Ask with strength to move away from everything that brings you contradiction. Ask with strength to move away from everything that brings you contradiction. Keep breathing deeply while you do the asking. Ask for your life to have unity. This brief prayer, this brief asking does not need a great deal of time. Because if you interrupt for just an instant what is happening in your life, it will be enough. It will be enough for your feelings and your ideas to become clarified by that contact with your interior. Peace, force, and joy to you.
Also to you, peace,
Force and joy.
force,
You
and
also.
joy. Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you, Ajit. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Antonio.
Very nice seeing you.